Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Now that's a Karamu welcome. My name is Tony Sias, President and CEO of Karamu House, and Karamu House is America's oldest producing black theater in the country, celebrating 103 years. Yes. So how many of you, is this your first time in the newly renovated Jelliff Theater? Yeah, it's looking good, isn't it? So we're so pleased to have you all here this evening. You know, Karamu, it's really busy around this time of year because in just 2 days, we'll be previewing our opening show of the season, Fences by August Wilson, and we're excited. Yeah, we'll take that applause as well. We have a fantastic season ahead of us. We open with Fences, then we go to Day of Absence by Douglas Turner Ward. We then move to Black Nativity. Then we do two one-acts by Tennessee Williams, one called 27 Wagons Full of Cotton, the other called This Property is Condemned. Then we go to, oh my God, It Happened Again. The Thought Left. And then we close the season with Aida. Yeah, Aida, I'm going to say it again. Yeah! Our mission here at Karamu House is to produce professional theater, provide arts education, and present community programs for all people while honoring the African American experience. We have a couple of new product lines that over the last 3 years that we are very excited about, and that would include, we present spoken word and poetry, and quite often we're working with 12 Literary Arts Incubator, so we're excited about that. We have a comedy series, and guess what? The comedians happen to be funny. That helps. And we've been presenting jazz concerts, and we've done some great work with Hubs, Groove, and a number of other artists here in town. So we are more than a theater. We want to do entertainment for all. As well, we have after-school and weekend arts education programs for lifelong learners. So I say that's for everybody, from the womb to the tomb. So there's a class for you, whether it is dance, tap, or modern, or hip-hop. There's acting classes and vocal music. So we welcome you all to come and participate in all of our programs here at Karamu House. At this time, if you have a cellular phone, I'm going to ask you to turn it off. Thank you for your support. It is a great pleasure to welcome you to the 3rd Annual Cleveland Book Week, presented by the Cleveland Foundation and the Anisfield Wolf Book Award. Karamu is honored to partner in presenting Mr. Shayne McCrae, the 2018 Anisfield Wolf Book Award poetry winner, for his piece, In the Language of My Captor. But before we bring Mr. McCrae to the stage, we are going to have several poetry selections by R.A. Washington. R.A. Washington is a self-taught polymath living on the west side of Cleveland and is the author of more than 30 books. Most recently, a collection of poems entitled Black Eunuch and the novels City and Four Interiors. Washington is the founder-composer for the group, the Afrofuturist music group, Mourning a Black Star, and is the director of the Guide to Culture, an arts and prisoner advocacy nonprofit working out of the Cleveland, Detroit, Shoreway neighborhood. That was a mouthful. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, my friend and poet, R.A. Washington. Bring it in.
Right. How you doing? I think I'm pretty good too. It is kind of unnerving to be in the Karamu House at this moment. I'm doing this thing. I'm going to read you a few poems of my own, and then I'm going to read you some poems from Shayne McCrae's Mule, which was published by Cleveland State University Press. This first one is called Irrevocable. For Eves, Vivaldo, and friends I knew. This morning, I wake thinking of boys I knew when I first fell to pages, a walk to cafe from our throwback hotel, the night's mist still clinging to be a young girl, firm, not yet possessing. Possession is an old trick. Possession is what stirs beauty. Mist never gets to be beautiful. Its fleeting becomes fog, the wise brow of well-wishing. Amongst the jostling for models, us boys, corner-looking as we were, Rufus of the Bridge, lines, first Haki, then a Dutchman slayed blonde, skirt up just to wink. The learned is always awful. We were caught jazz-looking, Saint Germain mornings, another country, us scattered, a moment upon waking. For I'm here now, strange as it may seem, amongst the ghosts, thinking of boys I no longer knew. This one came to me last night when I was worrying if I should wear a t-shirt to the Karamu house. I was like, should I put on a button-up shirt? I only have 2 of those. Should I wear a t-shirt? Can I wear sweats? No, you can't. All right. It's called The Host. Quote, and this is my life now, Cornelius Eady. The scattered houses that I lived in do not hold their place. There's no plaque that reads, poet worked here. There's a few grips of eviction papers, perhaps a singer, Dear Ra, the letter of some learned white woman leaving, before I Himes myself with Paris cafe sips, or delude myself into thinking the Tigray speaks to me, too. When I showed up, black poet, ain't nobody say good job, but a dozen or so, them poets tend to nod if you do right. Most ain't threatened by young blind verses, ambitious and is best left to the young. When I seek out my story for times like these and realize that the occasion ain't got nothing to cheer me, the introduction, me in 2 decades, me and my feelings about a job me chose, stuck to it, even me wasn't checking in. To see the fragments launched in so many militant lines held shelter. One more. Polymath. This is a quote from Ted Hughes. Was I the child or the mother? Did you braid it, that ambiguous between us? This is where you met me. Public display. A nigga built for toasting. The norm of postmodern, even the racists say hello. And perhaps I should have warned you of the time committed to giving. Could have clued you in on what my journey made me. Didn't expect to fall. Wouldn't have guessed that you were just as fire as you seemed silent. I thought we would enjoy a time. Now we enter our 3rd year. We talk with eyes, the second hand of connection. You have my back and I have yours. Even when the noise around us swirls its majesty and grips its needing. From my chest I can tell you, because this is not the life you want, even though you want me. This is the man I'm choosing to be, where community has a home, grace attended with time, and as I see you glow, even in circumstances not ideal, we define us for us. There is no doubt that this is what we were meant for. I do not blink in mind's eye of you in another's arms, and I will not stand for us to be less. We evolve from our love and live in our politic, whether poly or not. It is us watching the sun set along our busy street, the voice calm, the choir already. Somehow I lost you in the midst of following your lead, where I start shaky, the outer rim of stupid. You would set me straight with the cackle distinct as districts of singing birds, never solo, the chorus is monstrous, verse okay. I've been sitting on a memory. The seat is still warm from the day knitting. I find myself having no use for scrutiny. It's me I am after. It's me I want to shut down. I do not think this is a poem, nor should it stick out more than us not together. They chums. They not assisting how hands come. I never ran our team. See, I slip into the rules it learned in me. Who said best friends should be peers? I surely never was. Learning from you made me not feel so distant from the chance. So I never noticed that chip till now. So this book, Mule, they have them out front. I'm going to read 2 poems from it. Unfortunately, I didn't catch this book when it came out because I was protesting. Michael DeMonis, I was protesting him, so I wouldn't read anything he selected. We married in the front yard. We married in the front yard, watching our son disappear. Our 2-year-old son, Nicholas, who watched him disappear. Gesture by gesture, word by word, his autism slowly erasing him. He couldn't catch a ball. He could have caught the ball before, forgot the word for ball. We didn't know which mattered more, the action or the word, which disappearing part was more important, more our son, which part to hold and which part to let go. We said the word and rolled the ball again. We said the word and rolled the ball. We rolled the ball and we said catch. He held his arms out and embraced the air. Singing. We were back then a problem. Now we are a problem. But we're not the same problem we were. Unsatisfied, we wanted what they had, and now we want what we had then. We didn't know. We had it, then we didn't know how far we have to go, how much we'd lose taking it where to find them. They were everywhere, but hid, and they were part of everywhere. And then we found paths to their houses, burned their houses down, the city, burning our own homes, but they had gone, already left. The thing behind we burned. Our fingers, we burned the skin off our fingertips, pulling it from the fire. We burned our lips, kissing it, burned our tongues, singing to the thing we burned. I gotta open this file and read this bio. The poet, Shayne McCrae, grew up in Texas and California. The first in his family to graduate from college, McCrae earned a BA at Linfield College, an MA at the University of Iowa, an MFA at the Iowa's Writers' Workshop, and a JD at Harvard Law School. McCrae is the author of several book poetry collections, including Mule, 2011, Blood, 2013, The Animal Too Big to Kill, 2015, and In the Language of My Captor, Wesleyan University Press, 2017, which has won the 2018 Anisfield Wolf Award for Poetry. His work has been featured in the Best American Poetry 2010, and other honors include the winning Writers Award and Fellowship from the National Endowment of the Arts. When McCrae's first poetry collection, Mule, was published, he gave an interview to the Cleveland State University Poetry Center. "Each person is a world," he said, "and I know people are changed individually by poems, and then they take their changed selves out into the world, and consequently, that initial change ripples outward." Cleveland, give a hand for Shayne McCrae.
Hi, how are you? You know, when I was younger, I swore I would never be one of those people who forgot poems they wrote. But I really forgot that I wrote that second poem he read, like completely. I was like, how's that gonna end? I have some vague idea, but I'm not, I forgot the poem, but I remember where I wrote it, so. Where'd I write it? I wrote it in a library at Harvard, actually. I want to thank all y'all for coming. I want to thank Tara for organizing this. Well, everybody here for organizing this in the Cleveland Foundation, and Karen at the Cleveland Foundation. I'm really excited and happy to be here. And I decided, when I was sitting right over there, that I'm not going to read what I had decided I was going to read. So I'm going to read a little bit from my phone, like one of those people, and then I'm going to read a little bit from what I printed up. All right. Okay, let's see. All right, I'm going to read, I'm going to start off with this poem that I wrote years ago, actually, when I was writing my second book, Blood. When I was writing it, I was adapting a lot of I found this collection of slave narratives that were collected in the 30s by this thing called the Federal Writers Project. And I adapted a lot of them into poems, but there was this one poem I couldn't figure out. I couldn't get it right, so it didn't end up in Blood. It was adapted from the narrative of a woman called Anne Parker, and I couldn't figure it out until I put this book together. And I put this book together, this next book that's coming out, in response to Trump getting elected, so I couldn't figure it out until Trump. And this poem is called I Fight Him. I fell and broke my arm some time ago, 'cause my right side am dead. And me, I tries to crawl off in the bed. I is 103 years old. When I gets back from the hospital, they ties me in this chair. I was a grown woman at the end of the war. The boy who helps me up and down, he wasn't raised like me, he don't got the same manners. But we old ones know we still is got to be polite to you white ladies. Daughter, did I tell you my mammy Johnny was a queen in Africa, and I ain't had no daddy, 'cause queens don't marry, yes. She was a queen. And when she told them at the farm, they bowed. She told them not to tell the master, and they didn't tell. But when the white folks wasn't looking, she was a queen. The boy who ties and unties the rope, he says it don't matter who my mammy was, now that we's free. He fusses, and I fight him, and he says a queen don't act that way. Daughter, you make sure you tell him, 'cause he don't know, and you don't know. A queen won't die a slave. This is called Everything I Know About Blackness I learned from Donald Trump. It's got an epigraph from Donald Trump. It says, Frederick Douglass is an example of somebody who's done an amazing job and is being recognized more and more, I notice. So, America, I was driving when I heard you had died. I swerved into a ditch and wept. In the dream, I dreamed unconscious in the ditch. America, I dreamed you climbed from the ditch. You must believe your body is, and any body, and stood beside the ditch for 8 years, thinking. Except you didn't stand, you right away lay down on your pale belly and tried to claw your way back to the ditch. You right away began to wail and weep and gnash your teeth. My tears met yours in the ditch, America. They carry me downstream, a slave on the run from you, an Egyptian queen, and even in my dreams, I'm in your dreams. And this is the last one I'm going to read from this book, which is called The Gilded Auction Block, and it comes out in a month, and it's another one with a Trump epigraph. This poem's called The President Visits the Storm, and the epigraph is a little more succinct. It's, what a crowd, what a turnout, which is what Donald Trump said to greet victims of Hurricane Harvey. America, you're what a turnout, great crowd, a great crowd, big smiles, America. The hurricane is everywhere, but here, an important man is talking here. America, the important president is talking. And if the heavens open up, the heavens open above the president, the heavens open to assume him bodily into heaven, as they have opened to assume great men who will come back and bring the end with them. America, he trumpets the end of your suffering, both swan and horseman trumpeting from the back of the beast. The fire and rose are one on the president's bright head. The flames implanted to make a gilded crown. America, the hurricane is everywhere, but here. America, a great man is a poison that kills the sky, the weather in the sky. For who, America, can look above him? You're what a great a crowd, big smiles, the ratings, the body of a storm is a man's body. It has an eye, and everything in the eye is dead. A calm man is a man who has let weakness overcome his urge for death. America, the president is talking. You're what a great a turnout. You could be anywhere, but your anywhere is here. And every inch of the stadium, except those feet occupied by the stage, after his speech will be used to shelter those displaced by the storm. Except those feet occupied by their armed folks, police assigned to guard the stage, which must remain in place for the duration of the hurricane, except those feet of dead, unmarked space called the safety zone between those officers and you. You must not violate the safety zone. You must not leave the safety zone. The president suggests you find the edge. It's at a common sense distance. It is farther than you can throw a rock, no farther than a bullet flies. So I'm going to read a bunch of poems from that book, in the Language of My Captor. These first poems are from a sequence of poems in which I imagine a speaker who lives in a human zoo at the turn of the 20th century. Okay, so that's really all you need to know. This is called His God. I am, the keeper tells me, the most popular exhibit. You might not think this cheers me, but it does. I'm given many opportunities. I like especially to ask the groups led by fat white men. I am careful to never address the fat man, but the group. How has it come to pass that I'm on this side of the bars and you're on that side? And Who stands in your shoes? You or the people you resemble? They don't give me shoes, I say, gesturing toward a zoo employee, and I smile. Often the people do not answer me. Often the fat man squints and says, "It really makes you think," something like that, or "there but for the grace of God." I tell the keeper they must be the daughters and the sons of nearer gods. I tell him my gods had to stay behind to watch my people. He likes it when I talk like that. The truth is, I don't know. The keeper, when he's drunk, sometimes he says I'm lucky to have been rescued from my gods, and I should thank the man who bought me. I used to laugh at him, but now I grieve. I think his God is not a God like mine. His God is not a mother, not a father, not a hunter, not a farmer. His God is a stranger from no country he has seen. This is called Panopticon. The keeper put me in the cage with the monkeys because I asked to be put in the cage with the monkeys. Most of the papers say the monkeys must remind me of my family. The liberal papers say the monkeys must remind me of my home. The papers don't ask me. Some days I tuck notes, explanations, into soft monkey shits and call white children to the bars. I warn the parents, but still they let their children come. And that's my explanation. I am their honest mirror. I say, whether you're here to see me or to see the monkeys, you're here to see yourselves. This is called What Do You Know About Shame? Late, very late, long after the many families and the lone white man who stayed long after the families had gone. Last night the keeper staggered to my cage, weeping. He said his wife was leaving him, and he would never see his son. Again, I said I did not understand why he would never see his son again. He said he was ashamed, and his wife was ashamed, and she was going back to her people, was his word, and taking the child. I said I did not understand why he would never see his son again. I said there would be no ocean between his son and him, no bars between him and the ocean, if there were an ocean. And I said, surely I am making you a wealthy man. You can afford to travel, can you not? The keeper stepped close to my cage and snarled, your women tramp through the jungle with their tits out. What do you know about shame? And I shouted, you are drunk. Go home and be drunk with your family while you still can. He growled and struck the bar between us and stumbled back and fell. How do you know a white man's really hurt? I laughed. He stops crying. This is, thank you. This is called Privacy 2. I tell the keeper I don't know what he or any white man means when he says privacy, especially in the phrase, in the privacy of one's own home. I understand he thinks he means a kind of militarized aloneness. If he would listen, I would ask him whether the power to enforce aloneness and aloneness can exist together. Instead, I tell him where I'm from, we have no such concept. If he thinks I am too wise, he won't speak honestly. And so I talk the way the men he says are men like me talk in the books he reads to me. I understand those books are not supposed to make me wise. And yet I think perhaps they show me what he means by privacy. Perhaps by privacy, he means this certainty he has that the weapons he has made will not be used against him. This is called In the Language. I cannot talk about the place I came from. I do not want it to exist the way I knew it in the language of my captor. The keeper asks me why I refuse him this. I think to anyone who came from the place I came from, it would be obvious. But I did not think my people superior to other people before. The keeper's language has infected me. I knew of few people beyond the people I knew before. And when I met new people, the first thing I assumed was they were just like me. Perhaps even relatives who had before my birth been lost in the jungle or on the plain or on the other side of the mountain. And so at first, I thought the white men were ghosts. One spoke my language and said that he had spoken to my father. I did not fear them. I thought they had been whitened by the sun, like bones wandering. I thought I could help them. I thought they didn't know they were dead. This is the last one from that sequence. It's called Hopelessness. It has an epigraph from Rudyard Kipling, from The White Man's Burden. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, watch, sloth, and heathen folly bring all your hopes to naught. The keeper keeps me, he tells me, because he has no hope. I have become an expression of his hopelessness. My kind outbreeds his kind, he says. And I have lived with the keeper long enough to know he thinks that means, eventually, my kind will murder him and everyone he loves, and live in his house and eat his bread. He fears he can't defend his house, his bread. He has put his faith in things that can't be loyal in return. And also, all his hope is gone because, he tells me, he has kept me for so long. How could he free me and not fear I would seek revenge? He says he keeps me here because he would, if he were me, seek revenge. He is a strange man. He will not acknowledge my humanity insofar as it is mine, but will ascribe his traits to me in all their human complexity. It even pleases him to do so. I tell him he is hopeful. He doesn't fear me because I'm different from him, but because he hopes I will become him. So, I'm going to jump around. And I'm going to read from another sequence in the book. There are three main ones. I'm skipping one. This one, the speaker of these poems is a child named Jim Limber, who in the last year of the Civil War was informally adopted by Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy. And he was a real person. I did not make him up. This is called Jim Limber, the adopted mulatto son of Jefferson Davis, meets his adoptive mother, Varina Davis, at a crossroads. Up north, it's midnight in America. Here in America, it's midnight too. Daddy Jeff says it was always two Americas, and he just keeps it law. I don't know anything about the law, except I know what's true and isn't true. But sometimes I'll see Negroes running through a field in the dark and not say what I saw. When white folks ask, I tell them I was happy with Mama and she didn't beat me often till the war got bad. But we was going north and I didn't want to go the morning Mama Varina rescued me. She whoops me different, like what she wants from it is love. So I forgot to mention, Jim Limber only speaks in sonnets. Really strict ones. I should add. That one was an Italian sonnet, if you were wondering. This is Jim Limber, the adopted mulatto son of Jefferson Davis, was another child first. They put me in a dead boy's clothes, dead Joseph, except he wasn't dead at first. They put me in his clothes, dead Joseph's, after Joseph died, and I used to call him Joe. They put me in Joe's clothes at first before he died. Joe wasn't 5 yet when I met him. I was 7. I was 7 when he died, still, but a whole year bigger then. But I wore his clothes still, and the whole year I lived with Mama Verina and with Daddy Jeff. I never lived so good as when I lived with them, and especially it was Daddy Jeff, who kept me fed and wearing those nice clothes until they fit as tight as bandages. Let me see what I'm looking at here. This is a Shakespearean sonnet. That last one was a form I made up where I only used like 4 rhyme words and they just rhyme with themselves. I don't know why I'm telling you this. Why wouldn't you want to know, I guess? So here's a Shakespearean sonnet. It's called Jim Limber, the adopted mulatto son of Jefferson Davis, cannot depend upon political or economic power to be the wellspring of his freedom. I ask myself, what man would Daddy Jeff be if he weren't the president? I ask myself because I do not know myself. And I can't ask anyone else. I think he would be president of something smaller than America, like Richmond or even just the House. I reckon even then all the Negroes in the county would admire him, and he would be president of the Negroes. I would vote for him. Sometimes he lets me vote. And he says, vote as Joe, if he could vote, would vote. I vote we eat dessert first, and I run to tell the kitchen, like I'm a president, and since I eat in the kitchen. Okay, let's see. Now, holy moly, I think, yeah, this was a Spencerian sonnet. They're really hard to write. This is called Jim Limber, the adopted mulatto son of Jefferson Davis, cannot afford to make demands of love. Mama Verina feels for Negroes. Daddy Jeff says she feels for Negroes more than what she should, but he don't tell her what she should be feeling. For Negroes, he's the president, and what's more, Daddy Jeff, and if he wanted to, he could. Instead, he talks to me. A lot of the time, he talks to me about things he says to nobody about. He says, it's something like a Negro cannot listen, like the folks he owes a duty to, and that's a great relief. I know he's scared sometimes, but he don't show it much to nobody else. That's how I know he loves me, because he don't mind what he shows me. And this is the last of the sequence from that book. It's called Jim Limber, the adopted mulatto son of Jefferson Davis, considers his place in history. Mostly I hear him, Daddy Jeff, before. I see him, he talks to himself. Real loud when he walks. I hear him mostly anywhere, in the house, even when I'm in the yard. And Mama Verina says a gentleman announces his presence with his demeanor. I don't know what that means. I think it means she wants him just to hush sometimes. I seen her crying and slap him once, and the next day the Yankees marched on Petersburg, and that was yesterday. Today, he pulls me aside, and he says he don't know where they'll take me. That scared me good. But he just floats off, talking, just like a ghost, just like I ain't his ghost. So I wrote the book that I read from first, The Gilded Auction Block, and it has this big, long poem. I mean, big, long, I don't know what's long. It's like 30 pages long. And it's all about hell. And that book has this big, long kind of prose memoir thing. It's all about purgatory. And it wasn't until after I had finished the hell poem that I realized I had written a poem about purgatory and a poem about hell. So the next book is about heaven, the one I'm working on right now. And it turned out that when I wanted to write those poems about heaven, Jim Limber came back. And so I'm going to read 3 new poems from book number 7, which is not finished, but has something to do with heaven. This is called Jim Limber Describes His Arrival in Heaven. What was it like? It wasn't like the candle went out in my bedroom, and next I found myself in the sun outside. I felt myself, my body, more, so much I couldn't tell for sure if it was mine. I thought I was chasing a big dog through the tallest grass I'd ever seen, grass taller than the tall grass me and Mama hid from the master in the night before the morning Mrs. Davis took me away. And somehow that dog stayed just an inch or two ahead. I was already dead, and had been dead some time. And all at once I saw the grass was giant wings. It was angels' wings, whipping my hands and face. This is Jim Limber in Heaven writes his name in water. You walk through heaven anywhere to anywhere on that soft green grass, or nowhere it don't matter. Anywhere you walk, a bright and cool, and it's about a foot-wide stream of the cleanest water anywhere. With each step you take parts the grass beside you. On your left side, if you're left-handed, and on your right side otherwise. Just reach down if you're thirsty, or you're dirty, or you're hot. They got the sun in heaven still, and folks get hot sometimes. Me, sometimes I walk just to see the stream appear. Sometimes I lead it through my name. On earth, I couldn't spell my name. Now my great thirst has been revealed to me. And this is going to be the last of that sequence, and it is called Jim Limber Tells What He Knows About Heaven. Heaven's a horse, a train, a ship with no captain or with a captain, but the captain is a Negro, or a rowboat tied but loosely to the dock, the river peaceful. Nobody or everybody is a Negro. It's 100 Negroes on the dock. 1,000 Negroes, just like when Jesus broke the bread to feed 10,000 people, maybe 15, and the bread just grew and grew. The dock just grows and grows beneath them. 10,000 Negroes cheering you to freedom. 100,000, and you got good shoes and walk to the rowboat smiling and untie it. But heaven ain't you running, but you staying. I think I'm going to read two more. This is, I'm going to go back to, in the language of my captor, this one is called Sunlight. It's based on, I think I read in Jezebel, actually, a story about, or on Jezebel, a story about a woman who escaped slavery. She was a mixed-race woman. She escaped slavery by dressing like a man and boarding a train, and she pretended that her husband was her slave, and she just got on the train and they just left, and nobody really questioned her. And I read that story, I thought, wow, that's something. And then I discovered that several people did that exact thing. And so I guess this is a poem in which I imagine being one of those people. This is called Sunlight. I've been in a white man's skin in my body, and I have returned to tell you. Never in my life I ever felt more afraid, nor ever in my life so capable, so strong. Until I had been a colored woman all my life, as pale as any colored woman born from a white man's property. And I felt pale inside, but never white inside. Or inside I felt colored inside, but colored white, like I was truly white, the color white, and the master and his family were clear as glass, the clear, bright white, not white, of sunlight on glass. That's what they meant when they said white. I didn't feel white like that inside. I worked in the house. The mistress wasn't bad or good to me. I spent my childhood with her children. But about when I turned 13, her sons, one 13 and the other 10, began to look too long at me. The older for himself, the younger for the older. The mistress noticed, and soon I was sent into the fields. Not, I don't think, to keep us separate, but to keep the boys from doing in the house what they wanted to do to me in the house. I think it's white folks, what they want. It isn't really, or it isn't just, to not see the wrong. They want to not see it, and they want to know it's happening where it belongs. I spent 4 years in the fields. It was worse than you might care to think it was. But then one day, it was a hot day, I saw the strangest thing. I caught a glimpse of my face in still water in a bowl. I saw the older boy's face. I almost jumped. Right then I knew I could be free. 3 weeks later, I took some of the older boys' clothes and some money from the house, and I walked away in the night. I walked away, and in the morning, I bought a ticket north. And nobody looked at me except to nod. I rode the train with slaves and their masters. The slaves looked down at their feet. I caught myself looking down once or twice. Their masters, I don't know what they were looking at, except I think I saw it in a sunbeam as the sunbeam lit the window by my head. The dust in the air, the lint. I know it was lint, but it looked like worms flying in the light. And this is the last poem I'm going to read, also from the Gilded Auction Block. It was written in a hopeful moment, I guess. It was called After the Skinny Repeal is Voted Down, because that's when I wrote it. Even if only as one breath they, something of them, will help my daughter's child if she chooses to have a child to be whole. Even as ash in the wind then, in a dark cloud, then in the rain then, in a bright cloud white blossom blossoming then, in the ripe fruit, then cold in cold orange juice in a white cup, the 4 strangers at a Wendy's at a table across the room. I hear them talking about their children's children, that one is doing better now in school and what made the difference and whether one really should have gotten a car for Christmas. As around us, clear windows are obscured by clear rain. I breathe the words they say to each other. We live and die apart together. That's it. Thank you. I don't know. I mean, I'm still alive. How about you? Good, I'm glad. Yeah, I don't. Oh, sweet. All right. It's very subtle. Mine's on. I don't know about. Yours isn't on. Do you want mine and I'll just yell?
Check. Oh,
Ah, there it goes.
boom.
Nice.
This is nice.
Yeah.
So, how do you feel after all that?
I don't know. I mean, I feel fine. I guess. I thought it was an okay reading, mostly, kind of. I mean, it wasn't that great, but I thought at the end it was fine. You know, I thought it was okay at the end. So I guess I feel fine.
I got kind of pumped.
Good. I'm glad I heard it. That was nice.
I didn't expect the poems to be so devastatingly political.
Well, you know, stuff is happening, and so I write poems, and it is sort of inevitable that whatever is happening gets into them, but I generally start, I think, from a position that has more to do with aesthetics, and just try to be open to whatever's going to happen. But it just happens to be that most of what I think about, if I'm not thinking about poetry, if I'm not thinking about my family, is political stuff. And so that's what gets in.
I could let you go and like let it slide that you just said aesthetics, but I think you should illuminate for us. Here. Like, what for this particular book? What's some of your concerns?
Well, I mean, in some ways, it's always the same concern. I'm interested in sound. I'm interested in how words sound together. But in this one, I've realized, I guess, over the past few books, that every time I do a book, I try to do something new, something that makes me really anxious. In the 7th book, I've written a play for it. In the Gilded auction block, there's that 30-page long poem. In this one, there's that big chunk of prose. And since I know I can't write prose, I'm not any good at it, that was really stressful. And so I don't want to say risk, because that's stupid. I don't know how much I'm risking being a poet, but I think nothing. But I will say that I find it personally frightening to be doing things that I am certain I have no idea how to do and have never done before, and yet they're going to end up in a book. And so that might be my chief aesthetic concern. Other than that, I'm always interested in writing very strictly formal poems, but in such a way that nobody will know that that's what's going on. I just think that's fun.
It's interesting because, I saw Yusuf Komiaka read at John Carroll. I think this was I want to say 2 years ago. And one of the students asked him something along the lines of basically why are your poems so formal and boring? It was like a slap in the face kind of question. And it was strange because everybody was like, oh. And what he says is, I don't want to belabor this point, but no one's expecting me to be technically brilliant in my poems. How do you feel about the concept of achieving a technician's brilliance in the face of the fact that you are not white?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess I've thought about that a little bit. But there are plenty of black poets before me for a long time who are technically much more brilliant. I guess I just like doing both things. I like, metrically I'm very simple, but I still like using traditional meter. I guess I would say that I have always been sort of, in a personally irritating way, interested in appearing to be one thing, and then it turns out I'm a different thing. So that's probably part of it.
I'm looking up to some students. Can I pass the mic around? Is that? Oh, they got mics up there. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask?
There's one right down there.
Where?
Right there.
Right here.
But I do have a question. I noticed with the Jim Limber series, one, that it continued across collections, and two, that you dropped the Mulatto Sun from the titles in the upcoming collection. So I'm just wondering if you can talk about writing from this persona across multiple collections and what changed and what made you bring back this persona.
I did drop the Mulatto Sun, and I think the first time that I did it, I didn't even notice it, because it had been a little while since I wrote a Jim Limber poem. I guess I felt, in a very real way, that the only way that Jim Limber was going to escape that designation was in death, in the afterlife. But I don't think I wasn't conscious of that. But then I realized, yeah, that's the way to do it. And so in some of those poems, he's still trying to figure out how he feels about the Davises. He's trying to sort of reckon with all that stuff. But the thing I should say about the sequence in the Heaven book is the other thing that I was doing that I'd never done before, and I actually don't know that I can succeed in doing it, is that the Jim Limber poems are set in a multiverse. And so each heaven is a different heaven. They share some things, but each Jim is a different Jim. Each heaven is a different heaven. And so there's a sequence, but there's no narrative. And there's no, it's a sequence without sequence. So that some of the Jims lived on Earths that never had slavery. Some of the Jims lived well into the 20th century. It's, I think I liked the idea that there's this character who, if we as Americans were more interested in our history, or maybe interested isn't the right word, if we acknowledged our history, some of us do, some of us don't, if some of us acknowledged our history, Jim Limber would be really well known as opposed to like an invisible figure. But because he's an invisible figure, in his particular position, there are a lot of resonances, but there's also no historical record of anything he ever said or did. Once the Civil War is over, Union soldiers came and just took him. According to one of the letters, I think Jefferson Davis wrote, he fought like a tiger to not get taken. But that's sort of when he disappears from history. And to me, he's sort of an amazingly significant figure. And so I wanted to write about him. And I also think he's a good nodal point to think about a lot of different ways race operates and it could operate. And so I guess I maybe just felt like I wasn't exhausted with it. But the other thing is, to give a very short answer to this, when I told my wife I was doing it, she said, "Don't do that, nobody will like it." And so first, I stopped doing it. But then I thought, well, obviously I'm going to have to keep doing it. So.
Why?
Because if somebody tells me not to do something, then I kind of have to do it.
So your wife is brilliant. She knew.
Yeah.
She knew exactly what to do.
She knows what's up.
She was like, "I'm going to motivate you to finish this."
She's going to motivate me. Mm-hmm. Nobody.
Don't tell me not to do it.
Yeah, that's it. That's motivation. Nobody likes anything you do. So.
I think right there, yeah.
I'm going to try my hand at teaching the poem in the language tomorrow, and I'm quite sure students are going to say, "Why are all those line breaks in those strange places?" So can you help me with that question?
Sure, I can. Although I kind of would love to hear what they have to say because I've heard a lot of things about them. My favorite one was that people thought they kind of represented bars, like in a prison, the slashes in the lines. So what's really going on there? One day, I had started writing the poems for Mule, and I thought these were okay. I think they're doing fine. Or they're whatever. They're good for me. But I wonder if I could do something different. And then a thought raced across my head really quickly, and it was, wouldn't it be cool if you could combine free verse and metrical verse, but and have them exist simultaneously? But then I thought, well, you can't do that because they're opposites. But then I thought, it was like immediate. And then I thought, wait, you could do that. And the way that you could do that is when you're reading a review of poetry, if the reviewer doesn't want to lay the poem out as it is on the page for whatever reason, they don't have space or whatever, instead they'll introduce virgules, the slashes, they'll put those in between lines to indicate where the line break is. So I thought, well, if I just took virgules and I put them in my lines, then those would indicate where the line break is for metrical purposes. Like if I'm writing a sonnet, that would be where the rhyme word would be right before the slash, but then the line could keep going. And so that I could break it visually anywhere I wanted, but metrically those would indicate what was going on. And so it became a way to do free verse and metrical verse simultaneously. And so that's what I cheated. So that's what that is. Sure. I wrote it down somewhere. I can, give me your email, I'll send it to you. It's just a paragraph. It's really simple.
Anybody up there? No? Oh, sure. Wake up homegirl right there.
Why law school?
Oh, why law school? Okay. So I've been married 3 times. I bet you didn't think that's how this would start, but that's how it starts. Thank you. I've been married 3 times, and the second one, this person felt like it would be good if I could make a lot of money. And I thought, because I had thought before vaguely about law school, because I really enjoy logic games. Because when I was a kid, I was a math kid, not a poetry kid. And I really love logic games. They're hella fun. I do them all day. And I really love standardized tests, which I know is an unpopular opinion, but I think they're dope. They're not dope like socially, but they're dope personally. So I knew I could do well on the LSAT, or at least I thought I could. And then it turns out I could. And then, one thing leads to another, and I go to Harvard. But about 2 weeks into that, my ex-wife told me that she had met somebody on the computer and she was going to dip out. So then I was like, oh, okay. And so then I kind of quit doing law school. And this is kind of like the epilogue to the story. But Harvard is like impossible to fail. It's really hard to fail out of Harvard Law School, not like other law schools. And so it was just like, I was like, I'm already here. I might as well. And so I got my JD.
Oh.
That's why Harvard.
That story reminds me of a Ghostface song.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
one.
Very Ghostface killer.
Yeah.
Any other questions in the audience? Oh, up here. The man with the nice loafers.
I didn't even see those from here. I kind of thought that was Dave Lucas because of the hair, but it's not.
No, it's Dave Lucas's doppelganger.
Dave had
Everybody's doppelganger in Cleveland. Well, I want to thank you very much for
Gabe Lucas. Hi.
I'll look up afterward who Dave Lucas is.
It's right here. Right here.
Ah, okay.
Look for your hair, bruh. It's right here. All right.
Nice to meet you. I'm curious about how you consider the title and the role of the poem. You do a nice job of reading it first, but does your title come first, or does it come to you as you go, or when do you decide to put the title on the page?
Usually when it's done. When I was young and thought that I was clever, as young people do, I would come up with really rad titles, and I would never be able to finish those poems. So no, it comes later in the midst of a great deal of worry and upset, and how am I going to title this? And when I read that poem that had the phrase "in the language of my captors," the book got called that because I couldn't think of a title, and I was like, what am I going to do? So I read through the poems and I come across a phrase. I'm like, this is fine. And so that's how it got that title. But yeah, it's basically that's how I do it. Yeah.
Well, it's really apparent to us that you really love the process.
I do love it. I love it a lot. There was a question right there, and then one in the front.
Well, thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.
When you were reading the Captor poems, I started remembering something that, and And it was during the time that Obama was running for president. And it was some show where people were calling in. And a woman, a white woman, called in and she was very distressed. And she said, well, if he gets elected president, what is he going to do to us? Will all the black people come and be free to get back at us? And when you were reading that poem, at the time, I thought it was so strange, you know, to maybe not to think it, but to actually say it. So thank you for your poem.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure how to respond to that. Yes, it feels like an adequate answer.
I mean,
You know, no, I mean,
well, we don't want to tell them about what's going to happen on November.
I mean, I can't. I can only say so much about that.
It's still going down.
Yeah, you know.
There's somebody in the front. It was
Well, thank you for reading. That was really inspiring for you
Thanks.
to get up there and do that. But my question is, how do you think the work that you've laid out will inspire other young black writers to do what you do?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. Because that is not a thing I think about. Not because I'm thinking about inspiring any other particular group, but because if I thought about that, I don't know whether I could write at all. I guess I would like to think that my story, what a terrible way to talk about myself. I guess I would like to think that anybody, but especially young black writers, would see my story and see my poems, and if they liked them or whatever, or at least if they thought they weren't terrible, they might think, well, if he can do it, I mean, it's because nobody in my family had gone to college, and I did basically, I dropped out of high school and I had a baby when I was a teenager, and I did all kinds of stuff that you're not supposed to do, but I still managed to sort of at least currently be okay. So I would like to think that it would look like it's possible to live. So maybe that.
up top. You can clap to that while we getting everybody else up.
Thank you.
There was not enough clapping in this whole thing, so I'm just, we need to catch up on that.
All right. What events inspired you to write a story like this, like a series of poems like this?
I can't even see.
I'm up here.
Oh, hey, how you doing? Like the ones from Captor? What? Well, I mean, okay. Let me think about this. A couple things. The ones about the person who was in the human zoo was I was in Oberlin and I was walking by the Oberlin College bookstore, and they had in the window this book that had just came out, I think, like 2 years ago or so, about AWBA, who was in the Bronx Zoo. And it's not that I'd never heard of human zoos, it's that I had never thought about it a whole lot. And that moment, for some reason, it just stuck with me. And I thought I wanted to write about that. The other stuff, the Jim Limber stuff, on the one hand, I guess, as I said, I think it's a very interesting story. On the other hand, I was raised by white supremacists. And so I kind of felt like his story made sense to me in a way. Like I could understand. I mean, I thought if anybody was going to write about him, and I didn't think there was a big rush to do it, I thought maybe I could, because I thought I might understand the conflicts that Jim Limber might have felt to some extent. And so I think that's probably the reason why I was so drawn to that story.
All right, we're getting one more. In the middle, you got to help us out, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Oh, you have a mic. Somebody has a mic. Okay,
So we
we're
have a
doing
mic?
two more.
Okay, two more.
So,
I can't see anybody. Oh, hey, what's up?
so when you were talking about Jim Limber, you said that he only spoke in sonnets.
That's right.
And then when I was listening to the last poem about heaven, you mentioned that on earth he couldn't write his name. So I was wondering why you gave like the strict rules of a sonnet to someone who can't read.
Well, because in that sequence, Jefferson Davis speaks too, and I wasn't going to give the good poems to the white dude. Was basically how that works.
Yeah. That's Beat Machine Justice right there.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we getting one more in? Okay.
So I had a question about can you give advice to people who want to be writers and poets who are young people?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I don't know.
What kind of advice you want?
Yeah,
You just want,
general life advice?
don't drink 2 cups of coffee in the morning.
No.
Only one.
I can, and I will, with the caveat that in some ways advice is good, but in other ways it tends to flatten out people, because what works for me isn't going to work for anybody else necessarily. For me, what worked was, this isn't real advice. What worked was not having anything else I cared about, and also not doing well in school, and so like not doing anything other than poetry from like the age of 16 up. But if you can't do that, and I don't recommend it, it's good to read. It's good to listen to music. It's more important that you read than you write, to some extent. Although it's good to write too. But what else? Is there anything else? Also, you don't have to do it the way anybody else does it, and you're probably better off if you don't do it the way anybody else does it. But you can't know how to do it your own way until you know how everybody else is doing it. You have to really know.
Okay. Did that answer your question? A little bit? You want to you wanted a more pragmatic answer? Okay, good. All right, thanks everybody.
I'm just gonna stay sitting up here.
All right. Before we kind of dismiss everybody, I just wanted to come up and say hello. My name is Tara Pringle Jefferson. I'm speaking on behalf of the Ennisfield Wolf Book Awards. We're one of the 3 sponsors for this event tonight, along with 12 Literary Arts and Karamu House. In case you're not familiar with the Book Awards, we were founded in 1935 by Edith Ennisfield Wolf. She's a Cleveland philanthropist and poet who decided to leave her family fortune to the Cleveland Foundation so we could honor books that discuss racism and diversity. If you're not familiar with the awards, I'm sure you're familiar with some of the winners like Toni Morrison and Martin Luther King Jr., Langston Hughes. And so now we have Shayne McCrae also joining the Ennisfield Wolf family. So this week we will be celebrating Shayne and Kevin Young, Jasmine Ward, and N. Scott Momaday as the newest members of the Ennisfield Wolf family, Playhouse Square on Thursday. Our ceremony is sold out, but we will have a live stream on our website. And so we just really want to thank you for coming out today.
I got tickets on sale. If you want to get in.
We want to thank you for coming out today for this Cleveland Book Week event. If you have a moment in the lobby, there's calendars that have all the rest of the events from now until Saturday. And Max Bax is also here selling copies of Shayne's In the Language of My Captor and Mule in case you want to get those signed. And student groups, we do have a small meal for you out in the concession area, just as a way to feed you. Thank you for coming out. So if you... So if you want to give Shayne a minute to get settled in the book signing area, and then we can begin that momentarily. Thank you all for coming out.